in Israeli it would be Baruch haba. Now, you may be wondering who I am. My name is Tony Khan. I'm the president of the New Zealand Friends of Israel. Many people probably often ask me, being Chinese, how do you get to be the president of the Friends of Israel? The thing is that my wife is Jewish, but one of the things that was one of those situations where you marry into a family, and then they say, "Oh, we're involved in a charity," and you go, "Oh, that sounds really good. We're having an AGM on a Saturday. How would you like to show up for it?" And I go, "Yeah, great." And then I turn up for the AGM, and as you do in an AGM, they say, "We're calling for nominations for president." And then you can guess what happens next. My mother-in-law turns around and says, "I know just the man." and so I ended up with this. Now, one of the things that I did when I started with Friends of Israel was to think about, what is this organisation about? Because actually at the time, I have to say, I didn't know much about the Israeli people. I'm a Christian, but I didn't know much about what it meant to be Jewish either. So I started reading about it, and then suddenly thought to myself, gosh, this story is about ethnic minorities, about prejudice, about ignorance, about not knowing about each other, and in the absence of information, how human societies can fill it up on their own. Now, being Chinese, brought up in New Zealand, a fifth generation New Zealander from China, I have a little bit of an experience of what it means to be a minority in New Zealand. And it's the same for us, it's the same for the rest of society too, that each of us in our various ethnic groups, we actually think we know a lot about each other, but in actual fact we often don't. And it goes both ways. I remember my uncle saying to me, "Now Tony Khan, you must marry somebody Chinese." And I can remember my grandmother saying the same thing too. And just to be really cheeky, because I was in 7th form up in Palmerston North at the time, I said to her, "It's too late, grandmother." She said, "Why?" And I said, "I'm going out with a black African." And her face fell. She looked at my grandfather. She said, "How did we bring up this boy?" This sounds very Jewish. "How did we bring up this boy? Where did we go wrong?" And so it is, right? So we repositioned New Zealand Friends of Israel, not so much because it was actually established way back in the early 70s as a group to advocate on behalf of Israel and Jews, because they felt that the coverage in the newspaper back in the mid-70s wasn't that great about Jewish affairs. Back then they'd had the 72 Munich massacre, and then in 73 there was the Yom Kippur War. So back in the mid-70s, nearly 95% of the membership of New Zealand Friends of Israel was Jewish. But over time, as time's gone on, it's actually flipped the other way, because many of the Jews have now gone to Melbourne and up to the North Island and overseas to find jobs and get married. But now, these days, it's 95% Christian, 95% Gentile. And so, but in reviewing what New Zealand Friends of Israel was about, I thought, gosh, the story of the Jewish people actually is a universal story, a timeless story about people who were misunderstood, who had huge conspiracy theories made up about them. Things like drinking blood at Passover, and drinking the blood of young children at Passover, for example, is one of the things that is a very common myth, that when you go to the Middle East, people tell it to you. And you think, "Oh wow, this is extraordinary." So these days, New Zealand Friends of Israel is a society that's about fighting intolerance and fighting prejudice by using the story of the Jewish people and their history and their culture. And so some of the work that we do involves bringing Holocaust survivors from around the world, working with the Jewish Federation, and bringing their stories to high school students around New Zealand. So, for example, I took an elderly couple, because they're all elderly now, and the ones that we're talking about now, they're all children in the Second World War. So it's a very easy story to relate to in a high school, because they're children too. This elderly couple stood up in the school in Porirua. The teachers said to me, "Oh, you must excuse our students because they're quite raucous. They're very noisy, and We try to organise it as best we can, but just bear with us. But while these two told their story, you could hear a penny drop. And then at the end of it, the head boy stood up and spontaneously began a haka. And then all the boys stood up throughout the school and just gave this haka. The teacher said, we never organised this, it just happened. And then when they finished their haka, the boys sat down and then the head girl stood up and began to sing a waiata, a mournful waiata. It just brought tears to your eyes. All the teachers couldn't bear to stand anymore. They sat down in their seats. The two Holocaust survivors, they were so moved. And it was one of the most moving moments of my life, actually. So then I began to talk about what this is about for the children. I said to them, look, you have just seen a whole bunch of black and white photos from a time long before you were born. And you may think to yourself it's nothing, that it's not much, that it could never happen. But the thing is that the Germans thought that they were fair-minded people, that they were educated people too, you know. But look what can happen when prejudice and intolerance can go unfettered, you know. See where it can go. It's a terrible evil. And it can happen all around you. Think about your playground now. Do Maoris stick with Maoris? Do Tongans stick with Tongans? Do red-headed people, you know, get a hard time? Do you get a hard time for wearing the wrong shoes, having the wrong friends, not having the right phone at school? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you don't say the right things, because you're not interested in certain hobbies. Those kinds of things. That can happen. And that's the beginning of it. Where does it go? And so that's part of the work that we do. Now, the thing is that if this work interests you and you think to yourself, gosh, I want to find out more about Friends of Israel, I'd like my son and daughter, who are the two youngest members of New Zealand Friends of Israel there are, Joshua and Sarah, to stand up. They have a pad and pencil if you want to leave them with your contact details or become a member of, to become a member of the free newsletter list that's there, then feel free to contact them afterwards and bowl on up. Now, you've heard plenty about me. There's some housekeeping things that I must tell you about though. Just outside the door and to the left are the toilets. One of the most important details you'll need to know. Another one is that when there's, if there is a fire alarm, then if you can go straight out the main doors and congregate around the flagpoles, that would be really appreciated. And finally, I don't want to distract you anymore with 40 minutes of sublime rugby that I watched yesterday, but we'll then move on to Rami. Now, the thing is that I'd like to introduce you to Rami, Major Rami Sherman, who was an operations officer for the Special Forces Unit, which rescued over 100 hostages in Entebbe in the mid-1970s. Now, when he arrived here in Christchurch on Thursday, the Christchurch Star told me, oh, we have a Christchurch connection to this story, because the general manager of the Christchurch Star was one of the hostages. And he wrote on his sleeves, and when he ran out of space, up and down his arm, everything that he could observe about the terrorist situation, the layout of the terminal, the ingress and egress paths that you could take, the behaviour of the terrorists, and every time they ever came near, he had to hide his pencil and his pen because they would have shot him if they knew what he was trying to do. Eventually, the non-Jewish and non-Israeli passengers were released. The French aircrew and pilot said, no, you're not releasing us. We're not leaving until all our passengers are safe. When, and this fellow from the Christchurch Star, Colin Hardy, arrived in Paris, he was able to give a very full, detailed explanation or description of everything that happened down at that terminal. You have to think to yourself, gosh, how many people's lives were saved with that information? Because that information is like gold in a situation like this. So then Rami arrives this week and he says, when he hears about Colin Hardy, he says, I want to meet the family. The fellow passed away in 2012, but 10 minutes on the computer. Now, this is not an ad, but on Ancestry.com, I found he had 3 daughters. And I thought, oh, the first time I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be harder than I thought, because we're dealing with maiden names and, you know, and I don't, what are their married names? But fortunately, I accidentally clicked one of the names and, oh, the spouses were there. So 2 phone calls later, I'd found them. They're in North Canterbury. And it's just magical to see that they're here today, to hear this story, and for some of the great-grandchildren to hear the heroism of their great-grandfather. So I'm really pleased about that and quite moved. All right, so I'd like to hand over the mic now to Major Rami Sherman, who's going to fill you in on his story.
Okay. So first of all, shalom in Hebrew, or good afternoon to each one of you. I'm so pleased that you are here. It's on. No?
Turn it on. Green light.
Louder.
Green light.
Who knows how to make it louder? Okay? Okay. So what I would like mostly to share with you, my story. 41 years ago was a week which I took part in that operation, Operation Jonathan, or maybe people know a different name. The most I would like to share, it's my personal experience. Because Winston Churchill told something which I pick up, and I think after so many years, I really agree with him, sorry to say. But even what he said, you know, I just came to Christchurch and met someone called Ardi and family, which I never heard that name before. I knew there is a non-Jewish people who were back to Paris and gave a lot of information to us, which helped a lot. But I didn't hear anyone from New Zealand. So thank you that you give me a little piece of understanding, you know, to build a picture. I'm Rami Sherman. I born in the kibbutz up north of Israel, 600 meters. Well,
I'll just hold it to you. Just hold it to you.
we'll see. Hold it here. Okay. Okay. Oh, yes. Yes. I was born in 53 in a kibbutz, was 600 meters from Syrian border. On those days, you know, the ideology of the Israeli, of the kibbutzim in Israel, in my kibbutz was very left radical part of the movement. We born up in a children's house, away from the parents. The parents built the kibbutz, built the country, and we were playing in the children's house till 72. Very often the Syrians shoot into the kibbutz, and we just have to hide behind trees, behind wall or shelter, away from the parents. At 72, I joined Sayeret Matkal, now we can use the name. It's the most unique unit of the IDF. Did many things for the security of the country. At 73, I've been part of the troop who fight the Yom Kippur War, or the 73 War. It was a very difficult time. And at 76, I found myself part of officer which tried to think how to release the hostages. Uganda. I met a nice fellow from India, which born in Uganda here this morning. And at 76, what I remember when the name Uganda came the first time, it took me back to the school time when my teacher told me, look, once the English government want to give Uganda to the Jewish people to establish a new state. And it was part of the story of the class, of the lesson, and I forgot. So Uganda is in the central part of Africa. The next country is Kenya, which is important, and Tanzania. If I look a bit bigger, we can say Uganda is on the west part of Lake Victoria, Kenya on the east part, and Tanzania. And if I make it even bigger, you can see how difficult it is to land over there in the International Airport of Entebbe. It's all surrounded by water, and if you just miss the point, especially at the night, and especially if there is a dark airport, could be really difficult. Sunday, 27th of June, 76. In the morning, 248 passengers went into the Air France flight. They were from different reasons, like any other people who joined flight. Some French family who just back home, some young Israeli who just finished the army and went out from the country, some Israeli family who just went to visit their family somewhere on the world, some Orthodox Jews, some Holocaust survivors, some family with kids, some without. Different nationality, different language, different reason, but all of them went into the plane for good things. As the plane landed in Athens, 50 passengers went out and 50 passengers dropped in. One of them was herding. Between the 15 was 4 terrorists. And after 50 minutes, they left Athens airport to where Paris, the hijacks happened. So I would like to give to the hostages who were hijacked to share what happened in the plane.
In 1976,
it was the first family trip out of this country.
the two couples go to Europe on vacation.
After our holiday in Israel, we went back to France because we lived this time in France.
Was on my way to the Olympic Games.
Strange dream then because my mother died suddenly, surprised to hear that we were landing in Athens.
I wasn't meant to be in France airplane. I had tickets for El Al.
It was difficult for me because 3 children, 2, 3 and 6, a lot of things to do.
Earlier that morning, a Singapore Airlines jet from Bahrain landed at the Athens airport, and 4 sinister passengers, 2 Germans and 2 Arabs, disembarked, picked up their bags, and headed across the airport to wait for Air France Flight 139, inbound from Israel. There was no security in Athens that day, and the 4 made it unchallenged onto the Air France flight.
This was Air France, so no security at all those days. Trying to have a nap, I was tired.
These 2 young Arabs started running amok and shouting terribly. Then the German woman who was a real Nazi came, and you could see her voice full of hate.
And she had a gun and a hand grenade.
With the pin drawn out and just holding it.
I remember somebody getting up to try and stop them. One of the men.
In the speaker, he said that the plane is hijacked?
Freezing fear.
I have never been so frightened in my life.
I remember myself being 6 years old, sitting down.
She asked me, they are going to kill us, and I didn't know what to say. I've got a funeral to get to. I'm not having it. And I cut it down to 3 things. I could either have a heart attack, I could have an asthma attack, or I could have a miscarriage. And in the meantime, I got permission to land in Libya.
First stop on this flight of terror was Benghazi, Libya.
As I said, after 15 minutes, 4 terrorists stand up from the chairs, took the gun, it was very simple, on the 76, and told the passengers, hold their head up, close the windows, they collect the passport. One of them went into the cockpit where Captain Michel Bakov was there. And for 3 hours, they turned around the Mediterranean. For 3 hours, especially the German woman was very tough from the beginning with the Jews. Some of the Jews women took their child under the chairs. They're afraid that she will start to eat the kids. Why there is German who lead the terrorists? It's very interesting to remember that operation, a terror operation, led by German, not by the Palestinian. It's a 70 was a coalition of different, they call them sometimes anarchist group. Of course, they use guns, so we can call them, or I can call them a terror group all over Europe, all over, well, one of them was Bader-Meinhof group in Germany, and in 75, a German terrorist tried to shoot down the El Al flight to Nairobi. The Israeli Secret Service, the Mossad, found that they planned to do it, told the Kenyatic authority, and the Kenyatic caught them, put him in jail. So they tried a year after to release them from jail. So they planned a terror attack against 248 civilians. They could kill all of them with no question to release their friends who are in jail in Kenya. That's why the 2 German men and women led that operation. And they had a good connection with the Palestinian, so now it's connect the German and the Palestinian in one plane, 248 passengers from different countries, different nationalities. And they said to the world, that's what we want, we'll see later. As the plane landed in Libya, in Benghazi, first Muammar Gaddafi, the president of Libya on those days, said, I would like to stop that terror attack. He had a very good relation with France, so he wanted to stop. But at the same time, he gave a right to 3 other terrorists to join the 4. And after some hours of negotiation, the plane left Benghazi. On that 6 hours on the ground, they hardly got food, water. Of course, it wasn't any air condition on the plane. It was the middle of the summer. You can imagine what happened between the passengers. Nobody told them what they want. Just fear. They didn't know what will happen the next hours, the next minute. If someone wants to go to the toilet, one of the terrorists lead him, drop into the toilet and wait till he finish. one English lady tried to cheat the terrorist, cut herself on the hip, and as she started to bleed, she told to the terrorist that she is pregnant and she must see doctors. So, some reason the terrorists accepted, and they called the Libyan doctor. He took her out to the hospital, and just there she told the doctors that is only a cheat. She's not pregnant, but she is out from the plane. So, you know, sometimes it's happened when we are in a very dangerous situation, and if you have courage to do something, there is a way out. I said that sentence mostly to young people that I share the story. It's good experience for life to remember that. At 9:30 at night, the plane left Libya to go somewhere. They didn't know what is their direction. In Israel, we thought maybe they want to land in Israel, so we wait to them at the airport, in Lod Airport. But very soon we understood that the plane is going down to somewhere in Africa. You should remember one important thing. Sunday and Monday, Israeli government thought it's a question of French government to deal with the terrorists. Air France was under French government owner. So Israel want to be involved because there is the Israeli, there is Jews over there. But the most important thing which the country should deal with the terrorists are French government. We'll see what happened in the next days. As they arrive close to Uganda, the terrorists told in the front of the passengers what they want. And as the passengers realize what they want and what is the ultimatum, and we see, you can understand how was it there. Look, what they ask. In one hand, it could look a lot. 57, what they call freedom fighter. Of course, I can call them terrorists because they try to kill civilians. For me, that is a difference between any army who fight other country and terror attack. If someone tries to kill civilian, for me, he is a terrorist. They asked $5 million as a ransom, not that much. And they said one difficulty thing, the ultimatum. If at the end of Thursday, no one accepts what they ask, they will start to kill the passengers. That's what they told the passengers while they were on the air toward Uganda, toward Entebbe. They didn't say they will kill the Jews, they didn't kill the French people or other country, but to kill the passengers. And they were terrified. They just want back home. And then, after some hours, they found themselves on a plane down to Entebbe. As the plane landed in Entebbe, 3:30 a.m. Monday, nobody except them to go out to refresh or for other reasons. At 8 o'clock, as it was light, what they saw? They saw the big man with the Mercedes, with Ugandan soldier, or what they saw first, black soldiers surround the plane, and the big man talk with the terrorist, with the Ugandan, like he visit friend. It was Idi Amin. For the first moment he arrived to the plane and talk outside. Uganda is part of the UN, and even then, 248 passengers from different countries, yesterday I realized even from New Zealand, found themselves in Uganda. For what reason? At 12 p.m., they told to go out from the plane. It was 2 rows of Ugandan soldiers took him out to the old terminal. Here you can see the old terminal, the plane. Here is the control tower. The first 24 hours, they went into the old terminal without their personal luggage, a bag or things that every one of us need. Just drop in. That terminal wasn't work. So as they drop in, wasn't any electricity, of course no air conditioning. The toilet and the shower didn't work. They asked electrician to come in. After 1 hour, the Ugandan army truck arrived and threw in some mattress, blanket, chairs. That's all. From the first moment, nobody allowed to go out from the big hall in the old terminal. From the first moment, tension between the different groups start. Can you imagine about a room less than twice that room? 240 people, kids, babies. Everyone needs space. Everyone needs to just to relax for the 24 hours in a plane. And then they found them in so much tension between each one of them. If the baby cried, they told the mother to take him to the other side of the room. If a man snored, they just awake him and kick him out to the corner. No language to talk. The Orthodox Jew, from the beginning, start to pray. But if they pray loudly, the other tell them not to, because they want to sleep. Just try to go into that situation and to feel how was it there from the first moment. 248 people, 12 crew, and the captain, Michel Bacos. All of them were in that room, in one big room. Another 3 terrorists joined the 7, so there are already 10 terrorists, supported by the president of Uganda, and of course around Ugandan army. There were isolated from the world. They didn't know what happened. From the beginning, the Ugandan army served them 3 meals a day. Was a Ugandan boy and girl who cleaned the toilet. It was only 2 toilets and 2 showers, not more than that, for that number. Every day arrived an Arabic doctor who opened a clinic in the room And each one of the hostages who needs some help, he helped a lot. We can see very humanistic people around that story. It's not only talk about a story about terror. This Arab doctor helped a lot. Some of the hostages collapsed, and he gave him medicine. Every day they got pills against malaria. No one from Ugandan army touched any one of the hostages. No one. Only the terrorists. No one from Ugandan army say even one word against the passengers. Idi Amin, the president of Uganda, you know him. Who is Idi Amin? I drove to 93 when he was died in a mental hospital in Saudi Arabia. He suffered from schizophrenia. Probably at the operation, it was the beginning of that disease, because you can see two different personalities acting at the same time. In one hand, as I said, 3 meals, doctor, no one from Ugandan army touched. He always talk about trying to release the hostages, but he was quite a murderer and brutal man. Idi Amin grew up in a Ugandan army, and at 68, he opened a very good relation with Israel. Israel on those years tried to develop a good relation with many African countries. One of them was Uganda. And he visited Israel quite often. Many Ugandan pilots and officers visit Israel. Israel sent not only, of course, military support, but many other things like agriculture, medical support, and other things to African countries as well as Uganda. Israeli company built the country, built the old terminal in Uganda during the 60s. He had a very good relation with the high officer. Here you can see sit with the IDF chief of staff in Israel. He got a IDF paratroop wing. He didn't finish the course, but he insists to get it, so why not? Let's give him something, you know. And at 72, one day, he asked Israel to supply him a jet fighter plane to fight against Tanzania. Israel said no, and in 10 days, he told the Israeli to go out from the country. In 10 days, all the pilots, all the company, all the civilians who help a lot in hospital, in agriculture area, left the country. No one allowed to stay in Uganda. And at the same time, in that days, he opened door to President Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, who supplied him a plane, money, weapon, cheap oil, and he opened a very good relation with Yasser Arafat, the leader of the PLO on those days. In 10 days, just turned his direction and went to the other side. Tuesday, remember the first 2 days, Israel thought it's a question of French government to solve the attack. Tuesday morning, the selections happened. Oh, sorry. In the morning, Ugandan soldiers went into the room, made a small hole in the wall, and in the midday, they told the Jew one by one to cross on their knee to the other side of the room, to the small room. I would like, again, the hostages describe it better than me.
On Tuesday afternoon, for the Israelis and Jews among the hostages, things were about to get a lot worse.
All they told us was that it was too crowded in the room, they were going to make us more comfortable, and they were going to move some of us over to the other room. They began calling families.
The fact that a German woman was standing there and calling our names.
Jews to this door and non-Jews to that door, and the non-Jews are released and the Jews are kept. This is selection, this is Auschwitz.
They called several couples who were American, but were obviously Jewish. Either they had a kippah or their names were...
Name like Greenberg would stay there, even if with American passport. Being separated does not promise too much to us.
They might execute us.
There was hysteria, people were crying.
They forced us to go under the very low plank that we were supposed to almost crawl under it.
It was so humiliating.
Some people, there were Holocaust survivors there. There was a European lady, old one, who lost her mind completely.
She was screaming, Yaki, Yaki. She's living again the Holocaust.
The selection is a turn point of all the situation, of all the story. In a few hours, the Jews, not only the Israeli, found themselves in one room for 24 hours or more, a little bit till Wednesday night. They got only the food which left to the non-Jews. They were hardly got a permission to cross to the big room where it was a toilet and shower. All the time the German woman was very brutal against each one of the Jews. The young Israeli took to the different room an interview asking about service in the army. For 2 days they were out from the group. Some of the Holocaust survivors, here we got just a little bit of the story. Some of them ran out and they took in by hand. What happened outside? As that information arrived to the world, first of all, the Jewish world didn't know what to do. Again, there is a selection between Jews and non-Jews. Again, there is Jews without any defense. Again, there is Jew, and the most of the sovereign country in the world were quiet. It was only a personal people who said something. One of them, I just give one example, it was a few. Liz Taylor, the famous movie star, told that she would like to go down to Entebbe and stay there until it's solved, but to give the right to the Jew to go back home. None from Jerusalem actually wrote a letter to the Pope that they would like to go down. They didn't get any answer. In Israel, two things happened. Tuesday. First, from that moment, Israel understand that is now their duty to do something. They didn't know what to do, but first to understand it's not anymore a question of French what to do. In the army where I was, we understood that it's so difficult to make a plan to go down 4,000 kilometers from Israel to surprise the terrorists, to fight them, and hopefully to release the hostages. It's too difficult, especially in 2 days. We are on Tuesday, and the ultimatum finish on Thursday. It's almost impossible. What to do? So the most of the Jews in Israel and around the world, what they found it's a good thing to do is to pray. And a lot of Jews telling me that even they were not religious, they open the book and pray because there is no other things to do. I don't know how was it here in New Zealand, but what I hear from people around Europe, England, Scotland, Ireland, pray. Nothing more than that. Wednesday, look what happened. It was a selection. Tuesday, the French government announced we are dealing with the terrorists of releasing all the passengers. We not check what nationality they all, what religion they are part. We are dealing of releasing 248 passengers. Wednesday night, 2 Air France flights arrived and took out 140 non-Jews. Arden was one of them. Tuesday, one word. Wednesday night, 2 Air France flights arrived and took back home 140 non-Jews, which is make the feeling, the emotion of the Jews mostly even worse. Remember 76 was only 30 years after the end of the Second World War, the Holocaust. Many Holocaust survivors were all around the world, of course in Israel. And then there is 105 Jews left in Uganda without any possibility how to defend them. The only question was on the table if to change the policy and to accept what the terrorists ask, to release 57 terrorists or not. In 76, the policy of Israel was we are not negotiate with the terrorists because we are afraid that if we start to release the next terror attack, they will ask more and more and more. So we not negotiate by fight with the terrorists, but there is no other door who could happen but change the policy. No other possibility how to release the hostages but by negotiating with the terrorists. As I said, 140 passengers went back home. They flew over to Paris. These people, one of them was Colonel Colin Hardy. I didn't know the name. He, with other interview from Thursday late afternoon in Paris. Israel sent officers to interview them to try to get information what happened down in Entebbe. In 76, it was very difficult to get information. Today, a little bit more easy. In 76, we didn't know exactly what happened every hour, every day. So to get that information, Israel sent officer, the interview Hardy and other people, and we got an information. One of the most important things what we want to know, to try to think about the possibility of military action, was how deep the Ugandan army involved, what weapons they got, how many are there, how many terrorists we didn't know, where are they staying during the day and night. If there is bomb or explosion near the door, we're afraid that it could be. We go down and in 1 second, everything could collapse. So we got very, very important information from many of the hostages who were released. But it was, first of all, the basic information, and it was related to Wednesday night. Remember, we flew over on Saturday, and in 2 days, so many things could change. Wednesday night, the Israeli government sat to discuss what to do. Next day, the ultimatum finished. There is no military plan. We didn't know what to do. There is strategy not to talk with the terrorists, but there is no plan. So I would like to map 3 important people. First one is Motagur. He was the chief of staff at that time. Look what he said. And it's quite interesting because he is the most higher position in the army. Usually the army people push for military action. He was against. He was against any military action on Wednesday night. He said it will finish it is like a James Bond movie, what the other people talk about. There is no possibility to go down, and it will finish like a Bay of Pigs, as the American felt in Cuba. First of all, there is no concrete intelligence. We don't know what happened every day. And the second thing, at 76, the pilot hasn't got the abilities, they didn't plan, practice how to land in dark runway in a safe way. And it's very dangerous to land in dark airport, in a dark runway over there. I had on that, I didn't write it, but I would like always to add, maybe, that is my thought. He was, at end of 74, a chief of staff, when a Palestinian terrorist caught a high school student over there in the north town of Israel, start to negotiate again to release their friend from jail. He was against the military action. the defense minister on those days, Moshe Dayan, pushed for military action, and it was catastrophe. 25 high school students were killed. Probably it influenced him to understand how risky is it to go down 4,000 kilometers, try to fight the terrorists and release the hostages. So he was again. Shimon Peres, he was a defense minister on those days. He said a very important word to the Jewish world. Actually, he was a very romantic person. He knew that his word is coming to the world, to the media. He knew that it's good to talk, but he wasn't, in many cases, not a realistic person. Sorry to say, it's part of my country, a very important man. He did a lot, but sometimes he not really see the situation right. He said important word for the Jewish world. He said, Israel has to fight. Doesn't matter how that will finish, we have to show to the Jewish world that one of the most important things why Israel exists, to defend any Jew around the world. No more Jews will be somewhere without trying to defend them. It's a very nice word. He's very much right. At that situation, and Wednesday night, I think personally, he didn't read right the situation. And he was a defense minister. Yitzhak Rabin was a prime minister on Thursday. He said, there is no military plan till now, Wednesday night. And if there is no military plan, what Israel should decide to open a door for negotiating, change the strategy, talk with the terrorists. And if the army bring plan, discuss and see what will happen. So Israeli government decide on very early Thursday morning, first to buy time, and we'll see what happened. In one hand, they told by the media that they accept what the terrorists ask, and they want to negotiate with the terrorists, but they need time to prepare, so they ask to delay the ultimatum till Sunday. The terrorists accepted, but at the same time, they told secretly to the army, try to bring military plan, and then we'll see. So from Wednesday night, Israel went in two lines. Under the light, negotiation, and if there is no military plan, it must be finished by releasing terrorists and releasing the hostages. And if the plan will come into the table, we'll see if it's a real plan. Thursday, the 1st of July. What we thought was the only possibility to go down to Entebbe are an airplane. But it was so difficult, I just want to show you a few things. First of all, the plane couldn't fly down to Entebbe and back on one fuel tank. We should find a place where we can refuel the plane. And it's not easy to find that place. It's either in Entebbe or other country around. Second, as I said, at 76, Israel, or the pilot of Israel Air Force, hasn't got ability to land on the dark night without light. The flight was very, very much close to enemy countries. So if they got a radar up on the mountain, it was very easily to get that information, take a telephone, and tell the terrorists over there in Entebbe that Israel planned something. There is plan on the air. It was Ugandan base of anti-aircraft. We didn't know if they use it or not. It was in a very unknown area with unknown the weather condition. We knew what happened around Israel, around Sinai Desert, around some of the countries around Israel, but over there in the middle of Africa, we didn't know. This man, Bruce Mackenzie, he was the man which helped a lot to bring the option of military operation to be real. He is the man that opened the door to Kenya. As I said, we need a base next to Uganda in case we need to bring other force, medical support, and the most important, a base where we can fuel the plane. He grew up in South Africa and then Kenya, and during his time, he became in a very high position in the Kenyan government. At the same time, he worked apart from Kenya for M5, for English Security Service, and he was a very Christian believer, and he worked for the Jewish state. He didn't call Israel as a Israeli state, he called it a Jewish state. And he helped to the Israeli, to the state of Israel. In many aspects before the operation. Before and in the days before the operation, he prepared many things in Nairobi. The hospital there was ready to get injured either soldier or hostages. Israel sent on Saturday morning a hospital plane which landed in Nairobi, opened a big tent with 20 doctors and medical staff. He prepared the ability to refuel the plane in Nairobi. Unfortunately, some months after the operation, as Idi Amin understood how much Kenya was involved, he asked him, Bruce Mackenzie, to come over to Entebbe. Over there it was a beautiful table, beautiful lunch, and as usual they give present to each other after a long discuss, and Idi Amin gave him a big head of a lion, and as the plane left Entebbe back to Nairobi, it was an explosion and the plane crashed into Lake Victoria, and he was killed, all his members. The other important person was, let's call him David. You know, in the Mossad, the Secret Service, we don't use the right name. You know that Israel tried to get information, what happened over there in Entebbe. So she sent soldiers to Nairobi. Thursday afternoon, that man, David, took a small aircraft and flew over to Entebbe. As he arrived close, he told that he has a difficulty with the plane and he must land. First they told him no, the airport's closed because different reason, but he insists. So they told him, yes, you can land. But as he arrived above the airport, he said, I couldn't. I have an hydraulic problem. And he did a lot of circles around the aircraft. And on those circles, he took many, many pictures from the airport, from the old terminal, from the Ugandan army base. That pictures help a lot to understand the situation. Again, for Thursday night, but it's helped a lot. After doing some circles, he landed in Entebbe, in the airport. And as every, Secret Service soldiers, they know how to react on that. What he tried to do is to go down to see the hostages over there in the old terminal. But the Ugandans say no. So he took a quick flight back to Nairobi, and at the same time Israel sent a Boeing 707, an empty flight of El Al Airlines to Nairobi. They more or less land at the same time in Nairobi. As he landed, he took the cassette with the film, brought it to the captain of 707 El Al flight, and the captain, without stop the engine, took off from Nairobi. And as he took off, was cut of one of his engine, but he decided to fly on 3 engines to Israel. And he arrived to Israel sometime Friday midday, until it develop and paint and see what's the information we can get. It's arrived to start grabbing table sometime Friday night. So many things happen around. In Sirte, in one hand, the terrorists and Israel prepare for negotiation. Some of the terrorists told the hostages that there is a negotiation with Israel to release them. So there is hope came to the room. But at the other line, secretly, Israel prepared for military action. That is one of the pictures he took, David. You can see how good we can study the situation. At Thursday, 6 p.m., we call different officers from different units in Israel Army to set somewhere near Tel Aviv. And Colonel Dan Shomron, he was the biggest colonel on the ground in Entebbe, the higher range, to give an order. At Thursday, it was in very general word. What we knew from that our duty, the duty of my unit, Sayeret Matkal, the most unique unit, is to fight with the terrorists in the old terminal and release the hostages. The other unit was different duty, very small, but it was a very important that 240 soldiers land in Entebbe. 240 soldiers. In 4 Hercules, heavy carrier plane. Partly they tried to get into the new terminal to control all the activity around the airport. The other were reserved some doctors were there, and quite a few Air Force pilot and other staff too. Who they are, what they want, and they kill the civilian just in case they found themselves in a very dangerous situation. Still, for me, hopefully for you as well, to kill civilians, for me, it's a terror. Very simple. People who take gun for some reason think they can kill civilians. 9 in the morning, we sat and told the soldiers what we planned, what we should do. At 10:30, Colonel Dan Shomron told to the other soldiers what is the plan. At 6 p.m., Motagur, as I told you, he thought that the pilot doesn't know how to land on dark night on a runway without light, went down with Benny Pellet, the commander of the Israeli Air Force, down to Sharm el-Sheikh, an hour and a half flight. As they arrived, very close to the base, was dark, and almost they tried to touch the ground. The pilot found themselves 50 meters beside the runway. 50 meters beside. The next day, they left the country. Friday night, tried to show the chief of staff, Motagur, they can do it. So they took over, make a turn, and try again. And now they were on the line, and just before they touch the ground, they're afraid that it is too dangerous. They took off. Benny Pellet, the commander, as I said, turned to Motagur and said, "Yes, you see, we can do it." So now you can ask where God are. Probably he was the most busy one on the operation. From that point, Motagur said, "Okay, I support the operation." At 8 o'clock, Friday, we got the famous Mercedes. Sometime, I don't remember exactly when and by whom, we thought that is a very good idea to surprise the terrorists and Ugandan army by coming down towards the old terminal as Idi Amin cars. And we knew that he's always arrived there by Mercedes with 2 Land Rover Jeeps behind him. So try to think, how can we get Mercedes? So it's Friday afternoon. It's quite difficult to get Mercedes, especially in Israel, in the Jewish state. You know, everyone prepare for dinner and we close everything. So it's not easy to find Mercedes. There's only 2 ways. The simple way, but the honest way. The simple way is just to send 2 soldiers to the street in Tel Aviv, and we can find one, and then, we'll see what could happen after. But we are Jew and we are honest, and Israeli army, we can't do it. So we told the Mossad, they got right to do almost everything, So they told us there is a Mercedes somewhere in a garage down in Tel Aviv. Was 8 in the morning, in a night. We sent 2 soldiers, and as they opened the door of the garage, what they saw a very old car, hardly well. So we brought it to our base all the night. The mechanic tried to prepare the engine, the wheel, and everything. We painted black. We put Ugandan flag in the front, the Uganda number. It was prepared just as. But one thing we forgot, that in Uganda, as in New Zealand, Australia, and England, the wheel is just opposite than in Israel. So you can imagine, we surprised ourselves mostly. We knew that the next day, midday, we should leave Israel. At Friday afternoon, after the lunch, this lady, Dora Bloch, 75 years old, swallowed a fishbone. And the Arab doctors, as I told you, took her to Kampala, where it was a very good hospital for 76. She was there, tried to help her. We'll see later what happened. At Friday afternoon, Idi Amin arrived from Mauritius. He was there, the chairman of the African Unity countries, and talked about the hostages in the front of 40 country leaders. No one opened his mouth telling it is a terror. Why you support it? Why you said that you want to release them by different things? They are on your land. No one opened a mouth. 40 country leaders was quiet. Here, as he was back from Mauritius, the first thing what he did is to go to visit the hostages. And it's important to see, just because you can see the hostages, look at him and talking, just to give him some impression. How was it?
Before, he had the Israeli paratrooper wings, and he said to us in English, maybe, so something like that, maybe you know me, maybe you don't know me, I am Field Marshal Dr. Idi Amin Dada, the President of the Republic of Uganda.
It's Friday night, just before dark, the Orthodox Jews tried to do Kabbalat Shabbat, you know, the traditional way how the Jews accept the Shabbat. They start to pray. They found matches, light the matches, and then they want to sing some Jewish song. The other Jewish who are secular say, no way, we don't accept anyone to sing anything. The tension between the Jews was just the same as between others around. They stopped them to think anything. At Friday night, just before they went to bed, a child, 13 years old, told to his father, tomorrow the soldiers arrive. I feel like tomorrow the soldiers arrive. And somehow he was right. Saturday at 11 a.m., the Israeli government set to discuss what to do. The next day, the ultimatum finished. There is a link of negotiation with a terrorist by help of France and Idi Amin. So maybe we can finish all that attack by releasing the hostages, the terrorists, or to give the army right to go down to Entebbe. Till 4:30 Saturday was a negotiation. At the beginning it was real, and then they tried only to treat the hostages, Idi Amin, to show them that Israel is real, but at the same time, secretly, we prepare to go down to Entebbe. At 1 o'clock, all of us went down to Lord Airport, or maybe some of you know the name Ben Gurion. Today it's called Ben Gurion Airport, the International Airport of Israel. We load 4 Hercules. 3 Hercules was loaded so full that you couldn't imagine. 240 soldiers, 8 cars, no seat, of course. We sat beside the car, under the cars, if someone were lucky, on the cars. No toilet, so we took bottle as a toilet. We prepare sandwich for that long hours, that all. The Hercules number 4 was almost empty. At the front was a small operation table with 3 doctors in case we need an emergency operation on the ground. Just before we left, we told one soldier which old dog that we want to take the dog out. We're afraid the dog not understand Hebrew very well, and sometimes you can hurt us. So we decided that is not a chance to take dog that long flight. As we left, the doctor understood from interview hostages who released to France that probably there is a diarrhea over there between the hostages. So some of them went down to his friend in the farm and took a bucket like that, as you see here, to use it as a toilet on the way back. At 1:30, 4 Hercules left Israel before Israel government decide, but we want to shorten the time in case they will decide, yes, you can go. Just before we left, we got the pictures of the David who took it in Entebbe. The plane was much, much overweight. It was 3rd of July, very hot day. The flight was only 30 meters above the ground and then the sea. 30 meters, not more than that. Try to imagine what it means to fly 30 meters above the sea. We are afraid, as I said, from the radar over the mountain, the enemy country, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and so on. From the beginning was a turbulence on the earth, and the plane jumped up and down, and a lot of soldiers vomited. As we arrived Sharm el-Sheikh, we landed there. It was 3 o'clock. After an hour and a half flight, first of all, we went out, of course, just to refresh a bit and to breathe and to prepare ourselves for the next step. We changed our clothes my unit for Ugandan uniform. And then, just before we went in back to the plane, Yoni Netanyahu, the colonel, asked us aside because he wanted to say a few words. And he was quite a good man, know how to use words. Personally, because I knew him in a 73 war, we were very close, and in these days, he is much better than Bibi Netanyahu. I'm quite sure he won't be in a political area. He will be a professor in some university somewhere, probably in the state or maybe in Israel, I don't know. He said important things for the soldiers. And that word that the commander said to the soldier before operation, it's a very important word. Because we flew over to unknown country, unknown atmosphere. What happened over there? We didn't know. We got only short time to study the situation. First, he said, we planned something as much good as we can in that short time. I'm sure that what we plan and what will happen will be different, but we are much better than the terrorists and the Ugandan army, and we succeeded. Then he said the army did the same, prepare as much as they can, and whatever the government decide, we accept. And he had on that something which for me at 76 wasn't on my mind. I was an Israeli secular, born to a left radical kibbutz. He said, it's a duty of every Jew to help each other. Honest to say, this word didn't touch me very much. I went there because I was part of the army. I went there because I'm part of the very unique unit. I went there to succeed and to do the best I can for my country. In 76, I couldn't look further than that. I was 26 years old. That was my background. So he said that, and it's okay, we can accept well. 3:30, 4 Hercules left Sharm el-Sheikh, the most down south airbase, with a very, very overweight. The first Hercules, where I was, couldn't took off, so he ran straight, and at the end of the runway was a rock with 40 meters down the sea, so he found himself on the air. And it took him quite a while to turn down south to the Red Sea. So we crossed to Saudi Arabia, and then 4 Hercules flew down to Ethiopia area, you can see here, for 3 hours flight. The pilot always described that flight the most difficult flight. To hold for 3 hours, plane, again in a 30 meter, above the water, in a turbulent atmosphere, weather, so the plane could easily find himself on the water, very easily. It's a question of seconds, and for 3 hours. Every half an hour, the pilot changed, their hand was stuck by holding the plane. They have to change. And as we arrived to Ethiopia, around that area. It was 6:30 p.m. Saturday, 3rd of July. We got a message from the government, yes, you can go. At that point, it's a very important point because either we go down to Ethiopia or back to Israel because short of fuel. So they have to decide what to do. They said, yes, you can go. And we were already here. It was 6:30 p.m., dark, and in Ethiopia at that area there is a very high mountain, 5,000 meter high. So the 4 Hercules slowly come up till they reach the top, and as we reach the top, a tropical storm started. Much, much difficult than the first hours we flew 30 meters above the water. Dark, light, hills, rain, thunder, and the plane, even it was a heavy carrier, just moved to the side and up and down like a matches box. And we were mostly occupied, and that 3 hours again. It's not only for a short time, for 3 hours. Occupied by tied the cars. We are afraid that the car hit the wall very easily, the plane could lose balance, and we can find ourselves in Ethiopia ground. I thought to myself at that 3 hours that from there to go out it's impossible. Probably we will crash. We didn't know the weather. Nobody told us that it's going to be like that. I thought, what is the next step? If first it was that difficult by flying above the water and now storm, what will be the next step in the story? As we were very close to Entebbe, above Lake Victoria, the sky opened. And for 1 hour, we flew in very, very quiet flight. Only a monotonic sound of the plane. No jumping, just to relax. For the first time, after many hours, that I could and my friend could relax. The moon was on the sky, reflect on the water, beautiful pictures. As we arrived to the airport was full of light. The Ugandan authority in the control tower didn't even think the possibility of us to arrive. As we land, the plane, the first Hercules where I was, dropped down and fall like a stone. So again, I thought from that plane couldn't be out. But I'm standing here, so probably it was okay. As we land, the Hercules slowed down in the middle of the runway, that it was too slow that 15 soldiers could jump out from the side door of the Hercules, of the heavy carrier plane, and light a flashlight, prepare to the other Hercules to land in case the Ugandan light off the light. As we arrived till the end, the back door opened, and the Mercedes and 2 jeeps with 33 soldiers only went out. I was in a jeep behind the Mercedes, 33 soldiers, middle of Africa, middle of the night, 11, it's a midnight in Ugandan time zone. It was a beautiful air, beautiful pictures, what I remember. Moon, palm tree beside the road, and quiet. The more thing what I remember, it's a quietness. No cars running toward us, no soldier running, no sirena, but quiet. 33 soldiers with Mercedes and 2 Land Rover going down to the old terminal. We drove that road, and as we arrived to that junction, we saw 2 Ugandan soldiers. They stand there, even in the middle of the night. They took their hand up and say, advance, which is the understand for some people we should stop. The other said it's just to say hello, and if they saw it's a Mercedes, it's a mean Mercedes, maybe they could give us to drive. Yoni Netanyahu, who was on the front of the Mercedes, decided to shoot them. He afraid that somehow they realize we are Israeli. He want to surprise the terrorists down in the old terminal. The first Ugandan soldier shot by a silent pistol and fall down. The other one ran beside, escape in the grass beside the road, and a soldier from my car spontaneously, without any permission, shot it by his gun. And I don't know if he hit it or not, the Ugandan soldiers, but the second that the sound of the gun came out, it's like a bell awake all of us. Almost each one of us, the 33 soldiers, said it's a wake us from the beauty around, from the quietness, from the refreshment, to think, yes, we are going to fight over there in the old terminal. My first thought was, it will be again a catastrophe. We knew, as I said, that the first step that terrorists do start to shoot the hostages. We drove very quick the next 250 meters, something like that, and we arrived very close to the control tower and the old terminal and the big hall where the hostages were. The Mercedes and these 2 cars stopped in that area and was quiet again. Nobody awake, nobody ran out. The surprise, what is so important to succeed, was that good, but we're afraid that as we start to run, something happened. Our plan was that at the same time, group of 2 or 3 soldiers ran into the hall with a white hat on our head to know each other. And now the terrorists didn't know to which one to shoot. Hopefully, we will be the first one who shoots them. And it's only a question of second. Who is a more professional, who can surprise the other, or maybe we don't see who is a terrorist or the hostages. And it's a question of being in an almost dark room. see what happened. The first soldiers who ran in saw the two Germans beside the door, prepare themselves to take the gun, shoot them, and they were killed first, the two Germans. The other soldiers who ran through the other door saw two terrorists prepare themselves to do something, shoot them and kill the two other terrorists. One of the terrorists just went out from the toilet, which was on the back side of the hall, and as he saw there was soldiers shooting, he took a handgunner and saw into the hostages straight away. Some of them were wounded, one of them were wounded very seriously, and he was died in Nairobi hospital. He arrived there alive, but they couldn't stop his bleeding, internal bleeding. In the other small room beside, two soldiers went in. They saw two people walk toward them. First they thought they were hostages somehow. And just in a second before they saw them closely, they thought that they got a handgunner on their hand. They shoot them. They saw the handgunner, some of the soldiers wounded, not seriously. The other soldiers ran up to the second floor where the Ugandan soldiers slept during the week. For the middle of the night, 20 Ugandan soldiers were killed. It's a question which many times I ask myself, people ask me, do the right to shoot the Ugandan soldiers? They found themselves in a conflict which is not part of them. Most of the Ugandan soldiers, the most what they want to bring food home. Do I right? They are not really fighting for something. I can say only one thing that is my thought. In that situation, when you don't know what will be the reaction, we should clear all the possibilities that someone will start to shoot us. But it is still a question if we should do it or not. As the hostages awake, two hostages, even we were told by megaphone to the hostages in Hebrew and in English, lie down, don't stand up, don't run, we are Israeli. They awake, spontaneously they run into the front door to escape from the fire. One of our soldiers thought they are terrorists, and unfortunately they shoot them, and two of them were killed. In 7 minutes, 7 terrorists were killed, 20 Ugandan soldiers were killed. Unfortunately, 2 hostages were killed. And it was quiet inside the hall, into the big terminal. The only place where was a very heavy fire was from the control tower, from here. My duty was to be with the car and to stay outside in case the fire will start, and as I said, it was a very heavy fire. We tried to stop this fire, but it was very difficult because the difference of the height. As Yoni Netanyahu ran out from the Mercedes and pushed and led all the soldiers in a 5 or 7 seconds, he was hit from someone who shot him from the control tower. He was treated by the doctor beside where it was a bit safe area. And as the fire was a bit slowed down, I came with the car, took him from the front doors, and we drove to where the Hercules number 4, which arrived closer, where the doctor were prepared to get him. He arrived, he still breathes in his mouth, but unfortunately he died after a few minutes over there. And as I arrived, the other cars, other soldiers with a heavy gun stopped the fire from the control tower. All that fire, shooting, killing, wounded people, took about 20-25 minutes, not longer than that. 25 minutes. As it was quiet, my next duty was to lead the hostages out from the old terminal to where the Hercules waited for them to take them back to Israel, back home. What I remember, 105 hostages, Jews, walking out from the terminal. They were shocked. They went to sleep. And after half an hour, people, soldiers, talking to them in Hebrew and tell them, it's okay, you can go out, we take you home. They were shocked. They didn't believe. They didn't say even a word. Some of them went out without shoes, with the night clothes. The mother holds the children's hand. There is a funny things. Some of them hold a duty-free bag to bring present to their family. You know, in an airport we buy always bag to bring present, whatever. Some of them hold the duty-free bag to take everything back home. That's very important. For me, as a second generation Holocaust survivor, to be in that situation where I can see 105 Jews walking beside there is the Israeli soldiers with gun. I heard the voice, Rami, you rescue Jews. And at that moment, I don't know from where the word came. I don't know why the voice told me that. But at that moment, I was so proud for my parents who lost all their family over there in the Holocaust. I was so proud to take part on that operation. Even it's not finished yet, just to be one to lead Jews again, no more, to defend their life back home, to their family, whatever. I was happy to take that part. I didn't think about how dangerous it's over there. We're afraid from either Ugandan soldier or terrorists who escape. Maybe they are beside and could shoot us. It was 600 meters. We walk to where the Hercules. As we arrived to the Hercules, it was first very difficult to count. You know, there is no chairs, no light, very noisy because the engine was very full power. So it took quite a few minutes to organize each one of them. And every time we count 104. But we knew it should be 105. Till someone stand up and said, my mother, she is in Kampala. She took over to the hospital. It was Dora Bloch, of course. The first Hercules, with the hostages, left Entebbe after 52 minutes when the first Hercules landed in Entebbe. 52 minutes, not longer than that. In the time of that hour, we understood that his open door in Nairobi to refuel there, because we prepare ourselves to refuel in Entebbe. So the plan changed even during we were fighting. In the next 20 minutes or so, the last Hercules where I was left Uganda. So we land there, 240 Israeli soldiers, pilot, officer, doctors. We land there for an hour and 20 minutes, more or less. Not long than that. We took out all the hostages. Unfortunately, some of them will die, some of them wounded. 1 hour and 20 minutes. As the last Hercules, where I was, landed in Nairobi, he left with 7 minutes engine fuel only. 7 minutes, not longer than that. As we land, first of all, that it took about 40 minutes to fly over from Entebbe to Nairobi. They were very exciting, a lot of adrenaline. We talk what was right and what is wrong, young people, soldiers, even officers, always think maybe it should be better. And so, as we land, we understood that Yoni passed away. We refueled the plane, and after an hour, we left back home to Israel. Very soon, we fall asleep. Of course, I was hardly slept during that week. Around 3 o'clock, the BBC went out. It was the first one. Announced that the Israeli succeeded to release the hostages. You can imagine the Jewish world everywhere. It spread out to each one Jews around the world. Of course, not only the Jews. We were somewhere around Sudan, Egypt area. For us, it was again very dangerous point. We are afraid that the Egyptian Air Force sent a jet fighter plane and they could hit us very easily. There is no jet fighter, Israeli jet fighter around us. No one awake over there. As we arrive around 7, around Sinai Desert, around Sharm el-Sheikh, for a jet fighter plane from Israel Air Force as an honor flight stand beside us, and just a picture of honor of the country, of the Air Force, to give the 4 Hercules a possibility to go back home to Israel. The first Hercules with the hostages land in Israel around 9:30. First they land in an army base. They took all the hostages to the hall. Quite a few of them need a medical support. They collapsed. They were shocked. They got a medicine and they left there. And the rest went back to the plane, and around 10 o'clock, the plane landed in Lod Airport. Thousands of Israelis wait to that plane. You know, the Israelis always want to be together, doesn't matter what the reason. So as a hair that is such a success from very low depression of almost each one of the Israeli and the Jewish around the world, and many non-Jews who felt it's impossible. After that short time again, Jew without any defense, thousands of them were there, surround the Hercules. I arrived with the Hercules. What I saw there, it was a picture which couldn't get out from my eyes, but we didn't land there in Lod, we landed in the army base, and we went back to our base to prepare for other things. Michel Bacos. Michel Bacos was the captain of Air One's flight. At Wednesday night, when Air France sent 2 Air France flights to take out all the passengers, the non-Jewish passengers, he decided to stay with the Jews, with the passengers. He decided to stay and told to the 12th crew to stay over there. And all the week, all the other days, he stayed with them. He helped a lot to little things to help them. As the Hercules took him back to Israel, he told by the captain of the Hercules to take him, to give him a ride to sit next to him. He said, no, I will be with the passengers on the floor of the Hercules. And all that long flight is set with the passengers. For me, he's one of the heroes of the operation. Here is a picture of the hostages surround the Hercules. The beautifully shows Dora Bloch. As Idi Amin understood that we succeed, he told to his force to take it out from his bed in the hospital, and she was murdered by Ugandan force, 75 years old lady. The only thing what she want to go down to visit her family in Australia. And she found herself in a hospital, and by no reason she was murdered. Who is my hero? The first one, as I said, it's Michel Bacos. He is still alive, over 90. He showed me that each one of us can look at the situation of life and choose either the most important what we decide, what is good for me, or other values. You could go out to Paris. Wednesday, he didn't know what will be the next day, but he decided to stay with the passengers. The passengers who left were Jews, without knowing what would be the next day. For me, the value to take out from that operation is the most important, after 40 years, of course. The second is the Israeli Air Force. Without the commander, Benny Pellet, the General Benny Pellet, and the crew who took a big risk to go down, to cross any limitation, and they succeed. They are the second heroes, in my opinion. The third is Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin As I said, Wednesday, he said, there was only possibility to negotiate. Saturday afternoon, he said, yes, we'll take a risk and we'll go down. It's a big risk. We succeed, but it could be totally different. The last one is Sorin Esco. He was a paratroop who just dropped into the new terminal. The Ugandan policeman shot toward him, and he was for 41 years fighting for a life. He is a paraplegic since the operation. All the rest, 240 soldiers and officers who land in Entebbe, we are not a hero. We did what we should do. Hopefully, any soldiers will do the same. Hopefully. Yoni Netanyahu, as I said, he was a very interesting person. He killed 33 years old. His future was quite well for his life. It's an operation. 4 hostages were killed. As I said, one of them by the terrorist who threw a handgunner, 2 by our shoot. Here you can see it's running by itself. What happened? Okay, we just back at the 2001 and look, last year, 40 years for anniversary, the Ugandan prepared so much the happiness of the succeed. You can see the new renovation control tower is the Hercules beside. They left the bullet hole, the old one, and the renovation. Here from the top you can see how easy they can shoot down. Here it's me, last year in Uganda, in Entebbe. My new friend, Jafar, is one of his 60 sons of Idi Amin. And here it's an order of honor for Israeli army. The last things what I would like to say, it's about Kurt Waldheim. Kurt Waldheim was at that time a General Secretary of the UN. He was in a tour in Africa that week. He was in the Mauritius in a meeting of the African Unity countries as Idi Amin was the chairman. He didn't say even one word during the week that there is country who accept terror. Greece, where the hijacking happened on their land, France, Libya, Uganda, 40 other countries where he was visit for that. The world was quiet, and as it finished what he said, Israel aggression against international law. That was the UN. In my eyes, sorry to say here, not many world change. It's the end, it was a terror attack. Not only against the Jews, not only against the Israeli, against each one of us. We could find ourselves tomorrow enjoy Barcelona Street, Berlin, London, Madrid, whenever. Enjoy life, living with our family, with our kids, with no reason someone want to take our life. For what reason? For what reason? I'm a kibbutznik. I born in a kibbutz. Till today, I live in a kibbutz with a dining room and everything as it was at the beginning, and I was so proud to share my story with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Thank you for this fascinating and moving story that you've told us today. But as with a story like this, there's an epilogue to it. 3 years later, the Americans found that their embassy had been captured in Tehran. Jimmy Carter was the president at the time. And if you recall, the crisis went on for some time. Ultimately, the question that faced the Israeli cabinet was also faced by the American cabinet and the president himself. He rang the Prime Minister of Israel and it is said that he asked him, "What would you do if you were in my shoes?" And the Prime Minister of Israel said, "Mr. President, we already made our decision 4 years ago." And so, you know, the rest is history. They attempted the rescue. Circumstances were very, very different from the one that was faced in Uganda. And unfortunately, it came to a tragic end. Now, I'd like to ask a representative of the Hardy family to come forward just to share their appreciation. And to present a small gift to Major Sherman.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Are we mic'd up?
You might need to just speak up loudly. Or do you want to pass through this microphone?
Well done. Thank you for all of that. I'm Jan Hardy, the middle daughter of Nolan and Colin Hardy. My other sister Rob over here and her husband Ian Hamilton. And then Mum and Dad's grandson Nick Hamilton and his wife Megan. And then Mum and Dad's great-grandchildren James, Poppy and Maggie are all here. Maggie's been taking notes. She's going to give a speech at school. It's quite interesting to hear your point of view. We were living our point of view here in Christchurch at the time, and I know Mum hated flying, and the only reason she was daring to go from Greece to Athens to Paris was to get to England because their other sister was living there at the time, and the only reason Dad could get her that far was to see her daughter. She never really flew that far afterwards. She didn't expect to go to Uganda, and then I think Fiji and back was as far as she ever would go there. And I know when Dad came back, he spoke at quite a lot of functions, just like you have, and in the end he had to stop it because he said to keep reliving it was just too exhausting. I don't know how you do it. And the worst, I remember Mum saying to me once, the worst, like it was horrendous anyway, but the worst night was when they separated the Jews and the Gentiles. She said that it was horrendous anyway, but that was beyond the wailing, the sobbing. It was beyond anything that we should have to endure again. But the might of the mind and the might of the spirit lives on, and we may need it again in our future. But thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been lovely. Yeah, and it's reawakened it without all that emotion. It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, folks, I mentioned before that we were involved with bringing Holocaust survivors to New Zealand to talk to high school students. This is continuing this year, and so our Holocaust survivor is Peter Gaspar. He's coming down at the end of August, and he'll be speaking at a public presentation at the Villa Maria College Auditorium on August the 30th. It's midweek, unfortunately, at 7:30 p.m. Now, I know we try to get as many school kids along to these things as possible. He's only here for 2 days. He is in his 80s, so that means that we really can only fit 2 visits to school. So 4 schools have been fortunate enough to have him during the day. But I managed to twist a few arms, and we've managed to get a public meeting on 7:30 p.m. on August the 30th, Wednesday. So if you can make it, that'd be great. If you've got children, ideally I'd suggest that they're about 14 and older, because some of the things, he'll try and moderate it as best he can, knowing that it's a public meeting. But nonetheless, it's not a nice story. But such as it is, if you can make it, you're certainly very welcome. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's been a very warm and room and exhausting, but I appreciate your attention and everything. And if we can show our appreciation to make sure. Thank you very much.